What have I told you? There is a mystery hidden in the ancient scrolls, one that began thousands of years ago in the visions of Ezekiel, but will only find its final key in the last days in the book of Revelation. What if the past is the code that unlocks the future? There is a mystery that spans the centuries, a mystery that began in the deserts of Babylon, in the visions of a Hebrew prophet by the river Chebar, a mystery written in symbols, wheels within wheels, living creatures, and the glory of the Lord departing the temple. That prophet was Ezekiel, and what he saw was not for his day alone, it was for a time yet to come. That time is now. What if I told you that buried deep in the ancient scrolls of a Hebrew prophet lies a mystery so profound it spans from the banks of the Chebar to the final trumpet of Revelation at the visions of Ezekiel? Seemingly cryptic and strange are in fact a divine code, a decoder to unlock the final book of the Bible. The book of Revelation is not a standalone vision. It is the final act of a drama that began long before John ever stood upon the rocks of Patmos. The mystery doesn't start at the end, it starts with Ezekiel. Ezekiel, exiled and surrounded by the ruins of a broken nation, was given visions that baffled the mind. Wheels within wheels, creatures with four faces, flashes of lightning and fire that moved like a living being. But those visions were not just for him. They were not for his time alone. They were seeds, prophetic images planted by the Spirit to be fulfilled in another age, our age. You see, the same four living creatures Ezekiel beheld, creatures bearing the faces of a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle, appear again in Revelation. John sees them positioned around the throne of God, crying day and night, "Holy, holy, holy." How could this be? Two men separated by centuries, one standing by a river in Babylon, the other exiled on an island, and yet they see the same thing. That is the fingerprint of God. What Ezekiel saw was the beginning of a heavenly narrative, and John was given the end. Ezekiel saw the wheels, the chariot, the throne, the movement of God's presence, and Revelation reveals where that movement leads. One begins the mystery, the other completes it. The Ezekiel Decoder is real. It is not a symbol, it is a key. The creatures, the fire, the glory departing the temple, it all points to the final unveiling. Why do the creatures have four faces? Because the Messiah would come as all four. As the lion, he is the king. As the ox, he is the servant. As the man, he is humanity. As the eagle, he is divine. Ezekiel sees the image. Revelation shows the lamb. Ezekiel watches the glory depart. Revelation reveals the glory returning. The reason these two books align is because the Spirit wrote both. The Spirit who moved upon Ezekiel is the same Spirit who moved upon John. The same throne, the same cherubim, the same lightning and fire. The mystery is not random, it is precise, intentional, prophetic. And what does it mean for you? It means the time is near. It means we are not left in the dark. The God who encoded the future in the visions of the past is revealing it now to those who will look, to those who will listen. The book of Revelation doesn't begin in Revelation. It begins with Ezekiel. And those who understand the beginning will not be shaken by the end. The mystery is being unsealed. The scroll is opening, and the Spirit is speaking again. What if the living creatures that Ezekiel saw weren't just symbols, but living manifestations of the eternal Spirit of God, timeless, powerful, and holy? What if what he saw in the land of exile was not merely a vision, but a window into the throne room of heaven itself? And what if those same beings appeared again centuries later, not in Babylon, but in Revelation before the end would begin? Then we would be witnessing something far beyond coincidence. We would be standing before the mystery of the eternal. Ezekiel saw four living creatures. They moved like flashes of lightning, and wherever the Spirit went, they went. They were covered with eyes. They had four faces, one like a lion, one like an ox, one like a man, and one like an eagle. But then fast forward 600 years, and on the rocky isle of Patmos, John is taken up in the Spirit. And what does he see? He sees four living creatures, full of eyes before and behind, surrounding the throne of God. One is like a lion. One is like a calf. One has the face of a man. One is like a flying eagle. The same four, the same faces, the same eyes, the same presence. Two different prophets, two different exiles, both beholding the same glory. How is this possible? Because these beings are not earthly, they are heavenly. They are not bound by time, they exist beyond it. They are living expressions of God's nature, attributes, and power, and they are part of the mystery that connects the beginning to the end. The lion speaks of kingship and authority, the ox speaks of service and strength, the man speaks of wisdom and compassion, and the eagle speaks of divinity and transcendence. Together, they represent the fullness of the Messiah and the totality of God's character. But they are also guardians of the throne. They are the ones who cry out, "Holy, holy, holy," day and night. They are the witnesses of glory. And if you look closely, you will see something even deeper. They are the link between heaven and earth. When Ezekiel saw them, the temple was being judged. The glory was departing. When John saw them, the final judgment was about to begin. But this time, it would end with the return of the king. So what do the creatures tell us? That the Spirit of God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That heaven has not changed, that the throne is still surrounded by worship, and that the God who revealed himself to Ezekiel is the same God who revealed himself to John. And if he revealed himself to them, then he can reveal himself to you. The living creatures are not just prophecy, they are invitation. They are calling us to draw near to the throne, to see what Ezekiel saw, to hear what John heard, to worship as they worship. Because the closer we get to the throne, the clearer the mystery becomes. The more we gaze into the heavenly vision, the more we understand the times we are in. Heaven is not far. It is closer than you think. And the creatures are still crying out, "Holy." What if the temple that Ezekiel saw was never meant to be just a building? What if it was a shadow, a vision not rooted in stone, but in eternity, a pattern of something far greater? What if that temple, measured in detail by the prophet, was a glimpse into heaven itself? And what if the true fulfillment of that vision wouldn't be found in the dust of earth, but in the final revelation, the temple not of man, but of God? Then you would have in your hands one of the deepest mysteries of prophecy and a connection that ties the scroll of Ezekiel to the end-time revelation. Ezekiel was shown a temple, massive, precise, measured by a rod of divine instruction. A temple he never entered. A temple that was never built in his day, and many have tried to decipher it. Was it a future earthly temple? Was it a vision of restoration? But what if it was more? In Revelation, John too is shown a temple, but this one is different. Not on earth, not made with hands. It is the heavenly temple, the place where the throne of God dwells, where the Lamb is worshipped, and where the incense of the saints rises before the Almighty. John is told to measure it, not its walls, but its worshipers. And just as in Ezekiel, the measuring begins. Why measuring? Because measurement speaks of ownership. What is measured belongs to God. What is measured is protected. Ezekiel measured the outer court, the walls, the altar. John is told to measure the inner temple, but leave out the outer court, for it is given to the nations. The parallel is stunning. One is the earthly shadow. The other is the heavenly reality. One is the blueprint. The other is the fulfillment. And then comes the mystery. In the final chapters of Revelation, John sees something that Ezekiel never did, a temple that disappears. "I saw no temple in the city," he says, "for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple." The structure fades and only the presence remains. What does that tell you? That the ultimate goal was never the building, but the indwelling. That God would no longer dwell in temples of stone, but in the hearts of his people. Ezekiel saw the glory return through the eastern gate. John sees the glory descending, the New Jerusalem shining with the radiance of God. No curtain, no division, no more outer courts. Only light, only presence, only God. And the amazing truth is this: that temple is not just about a future city, it's about you. You were made to be a dwelling place of the Most High. You were created to carry the presence that once filled the Holy of Holies. The measurements, the altars, the visions, they all point to one thing: restoration, not just of a building, but of a relationship. So let the temple rise, not just in prophecy, but in you. Let the veil be torn, the gates be open, and the glory come in. Because the mystery of the temple is not stone, it's presence. Not architecture, but intimacy. And that mystery is being revealed again in these final days. What if the valley of dry bones was not just a vision, but a prophecy sealed in time, waiting for the appointed moment to rise from the dust of the earth? What if Ezekiel's valley wasn't a symbol of the past, but a blueprint of the future? And what if we are living in the days when that vision has come to pass before our very eyes? Then you would be witnessing one of the greatest fulfillments of biblical prophecy in modern history, and one of the clearest signs that the hand of God is moving in these last days. Ezekiel was taken by the Spirit into a valley filled with bones, not skeletons, not corpses, bones, very dry, lifeless, disconnected, forgotten. And God asked him a question: Son of man, can these bones live? Ezekiel didn't say yes or no. He said, Lord, you know, because only God could bring life from death. And then came the command: prophesy to the bones, speak life to what was dead, declare breath into what. And as he spoke, the bones began to rattle, to join, to align, to form. Flesh came upon them, and breath entered them. They stood on their feet, a mighty army. But what was it all about? God gave the answer. These bones are the whole house of Israel, a people scattered to the nations, a nation crushed by exile, persecution, and death. For 2,000 years, Israel was no more. The language died. The cities lay in ruins. The people were dispersed across the earth. And then it happened. In 1948, the impossible took place. The bones came together. A nation that had ceased to exist was born again in a day. The ancient tongue returned, the land came to life, and the flag of Israel was raised once more in Jerusalem. No other nation has vanished for 2 millennia and returned. No other people has kept their identity through dispersion, but Israel did because God said they would. Ezekiel's vision is not a dream, it's our reality, and it didn't end in 1948. The bones are rising still. The spiritual breath is coming. The awakening has begun. And what does this mean for us? It means we're living in prophetic times. It means the God who promised to regather his people has done it. It means the countdown has begun, because after the bones rise, Ezekiel speaks of the battle of Gog and Magog. He speaks of nations gathering, of the final conflict, and then the return of the glory. So when you see the Star of David flying in the land of Abraham, when you hear Hebrew spoken in the streets of Tel Aviv, when you see the desert blooming, know this: the dry bones have risen. The prophecy is alive, and the same God who fulfilled his word to Israel will fulfill every word to you. What he begins, he finishes. What he scatters, he gathers. And what he breathes on lives. The bones have come together. The breath is come, and the king is near. What if the wheels Ezekiel saw, those strange spinning, intersecting wheels, weren't random visions, but encoded messages of divine motion? What if the eyes that filled them weren't simply for effect, but revealed the all-seeing presence of the Almighty? What if the very movement of those wheels holds the secret to how God moves in history, in judgment, in mercy, in your life and mine? Then we are not just dealing with visions, we are touching eternity. Ezekiel stood by the river and saw what few had ever seen. The heavens opened, and a storm cloud appeared, flashing with fire, bursting with radiance, and within it, wheels, not just one, but wheels within wheels. A mystery wrapped inside of a mystery. The wheels sparkled like beryl, a fiery crystal, and they moved in all four directions without turning. Wherever the Spirit went, the wheels went. And the wheels were covered in eyes. What does it mean? The wheels represent movement, but not human movement, divine movement. Motion not bound by gravity or time or direction. Wheels within wheels means dimension within dimension, plans within plans. God is not limited to linear time. He moves through history like an author moves through a story. He is not surprised by events. He is orchestrating them. The wheels move forward and backward and sideways all at once because the plan of God moves even when we don't see it and even when we don't understand it. And then the eyes, why are the wheels full of eyes? Because God sees, he sees what no man sees. He sees what is hidden in the shadows, what is whispered in secret, what is done behind closed doors. No leader rises, no nation falls, no law is passed, no heart turns without him knowing it. The eyes and the wheels are his omniscience, his all-seeing gaze that pierces the lies of man and the schemes of the enemy. You may think he's distant, you may think he's silent, but he's watching. He's moving. He's aligning the wheels of time to bring forth his will. And this isn't just about Ezekiel. In Revelation, John sees similar realities. Thrones, fire, creatures full of eyes. Why? Because the spirit that gave the vision to Ezekiel is the same spirit that gave the vision to John. The wheels are still turning. The plan is still unfolding. The end has already been written. What does it mean for you? It means your life is not random. Your battles are not unseen. Your tears are not wasted. The God of the wheels sees you. He moves in ways you can't perceive, but his timing is perfect. What you thought was a delay may be divine alignment. What you saw as silence may be the sound of heavenly wheels turning. So don't fear the chaos. Don't be shaken by the storm. The same God who moved through exile, through empire, through history is moving in your life right now. The wheels are turning, the eyes are watching, and the story is being written. What if I told you that the departure of God's glory from the temple wasn't just a tragic moment in Israel's history, but a prophetic warning for every nation, every generation, and every heart? What if the vision Ezekiel saw, the glory lifting, the presence leaving, was not the end, but the beginning of a divine pattern that would repeat itself across time? Then the vision would no longer be ancient. It would be now. Ezekiel stood by the eastern gate and saw it happen. The glory of the Lord, the radiant, overwhelming presence that once filled the temple began to move. It rose from the Holy of Holies and hovered above the threshold. Then it moved again, stopping at the eastern gate. And then finally, it departed the city altogether. The presence of God had left his house. Why? Because the people had turned their backs. The nation that once knew his voice had silenced it. The sanctuary that once welcomed his fire had defiled it. And so the glory left. But this wasn't just about Israel. It's a template when a people, a nation, a culture turns from God, when truth is cast down, when righteousness is mocked, when altars are replaced with idols, the presence begins to withdraw. First slowly, then suddenly. And the tragedy is, most don't even notice. The temple kept functioning, the priests kept serving, but the glory was gone. Now look around today. Has the glory departed? Have we pushed his presence to the margins? Have we replaced the sacred with the profane? In our own lives, have we made space for his glory, or have we allowed other things to take its place? Because the same God who left the temple in Ezekiel's day is the same God now. He is holy, he is not mocked, and he does not dwell where he is not honored. But here's the mystery. Ezekiel also saw the return. In a later vision, the prophet is brought back to the same temple, the same gate, and what does he see? The glory returning, coming from the east just as it departed, filling the house once more, the presence restored, the fire rekindled, the glory re-entering the temple with a sound like rushing waters. That's the hope, that even when the glory has departed, it can return. Even when the fire has died out, it can burn again. Even when the Spirit has been grieved, he can come back. But it begins with repentance. It begins with turning. It begins with making room again for the presence of God. So let the eastern gate of your heart be opened. Let the temple be cleansed. Let the idols be cast down, because the glory that departed is the same glory that desires to return. The God of Ezekiel is not finished. He is calling his people back. He is calling his presence home. And when he returns, everything changes. The temple is no longer empty. The altar no longer cold. The city no longer forsaken. The glory comes again, and this time to dwell forever. What if the river that Ezekiel saw flowing from beneath the threshold of the temple was not merely water, but a mystery, a revelation, a stream of life that began in the heavenly realm and would one day flood the earth with healing? What if that river was more than a vision? What if it was a prophecy waiting for its hour? And what if that hour is now approaching? Then we are not just speaking of water, we are speaking of destiny. Ezekiel was brought by the Spirit to the temple once more, but this time he saw something different. He saw water, just a trickle at first, issuing from beneath the threshold, from the right side, flowing eastward. It moved past the altar and into the wilderness, and as the man with the measuring line walked alongside it, the waters grew deeper, ankle deep, then knee deep, waist deep, and finally, a river that could not be crossed. But this was no ordinary river. Wherever the river flowed, everything came to life. The desert bloomed, the salt waters became fresh, trees sprang up along its banks, trees that bore fruit every month, whose leaves were for healing. And then came the mystery. This river flows not from the sky, not from a mountain, not from the sea, but from the temple, from the very dwelling place of God, from his presence. What does it mean? The river is the Spirit of God, the same Spirit that hovered over the waters in Genesis, the same Spirit that came upon the prophets, the same Spirit that descended on Messiah at the Jordan. It is the river of life that flows from the throne of God. And the deeper you go, the more life it brings. And in the book of Revelation, John sees it again. He sees a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. It flows through the New Jerusalem, and on either side, the tree of life. Fruit in season needs for healing, just as Ezekiel saw. The vision comes full circle. The river is real, and it is eternal. But here's the key. You were made to enter that river. Not to stay ankle deep, not to wade in the shallows, but to be immersed, to be carried, to be transformed. Because the river isn't just about healing the world, it's about healing you, your heart, your soul, your life. The Spirit is flowing now, and the invitation is open. Deeper, let go of the shore. Step into what God is doing. The world may grow darker, but the river grows stronger. The wilderness may widen, but the waters still flow. And when the glory returns, when the King comes, the river will cover the earth. So now is the time. Let the river rise in you. Let the presence overflow. Let the Spirit carry you where you've never walked before. Because the river is moving and it is alive. So to those with eyes to see and ears to hear, the mystery is not to confuse you, but to prepare you. What was sealed is now being unsealed. The time is short. The signs are many. The trumpet is near. Walk in the mystery, but live in the light. May you be blessed. May you be strong. And may you be found faithful when the glory returns. Until then, shalom and thank you for watching.